Hey, Jason, FYI, can you see me or am I only seeing you?
I cannot see you.
Okay, that's fine. You don't need to see me. I just wondered.
No, I cannot see you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome to the webinar Keto 101 and 102. I'm your host, Jason Yun, creator of the 47-day Ketogenic Diet Challenge. And I'm going to just come into a expedited webinar real quick and go over the most important points covering ketogenic. I'll go over some of my favorite recipes, and then at the end, I will open it up for any questions. So let me share my screen here. Okay. So can you guys see the presentation there?
Yes.
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 Very cool. Very cool. All right. So let's get started here. And basically, with ketogenic, I always like to start off by saying, basically, in terms of your overall health and longevity and living a disease-free life, healthy life, then controlling your blood sugars is the number one thing that you can do in terms of your longevity and your health. So I truly believe in the next 2 decades that this is going to become basically the norm for eating over the next 20 years. But the ones that implement it first, they're going to get the health benefits, and then as the 20 years keeps coming, people are not going to, they're going to have health defects that is obviously going to cost them their life or their quality of living, which we don't want. So we want to adapt a healthier lifestyle, and I think this is one of the most healthiest lifestyles that you could possibly follow. So with that, what is keto? So keto, it is short for the ketogenic diet, and I don't like the fact that diet is included in the term keto, because most people, when they think of diet, they think of short-term weight loss, calorie restriction, hungry all the time, and that kind of stuff. So it's not like that, which I'll get into. But basically, ketogenic is eat more fat, eat less carbs, and some people do mistake low carb, high fat for keto, and they're not the same. So keto is, I'll get into the specific details, but keto is usually a lot less carbs, moderate protein, and high fat. So typically the recommendations are less than 50 grams of carbohydrates for the ketogenic diet. However, low carb could, for some people, it could go up to 100, 150 if you're just a high charging athlete and you need that many. But keto, low carb, high fat is not the same. Low carb is not the same. I'll get into the differences between all of that as well. It's not the Atkins diet. It's not a paleo diet. It's not a primal diet. You can do similar forms of those types of diets, but it's not going to be true ketosis. And the benefit is when you do get into ketosis, that's when you have the health benefits. For me, when I got into keto, mental clarity was the biggest thing for me. All right. So sugar to fat burner. All right. So this is the primary reason that you want to switch. You cannot burn fat when carbs are present in the body. Ketones are your body's preferred fuel, but the majority of people, their primary fuel is glucose, which is carbohydrates, which is also sugar. So I'll use those terms, glucose, carbohydrates, and sugar interchangeably from this point on. So your body will use the glucose first before ketones. So as long as there's any glucose present, So as long as glucose is present, your body cannot use ketones as the main fuel. So in order to deplete glucose and glycogen, which is the stored carbohydrates, you need to limit your carbohydrates, and you also need to limit your protein, which I'll go over here. But most people think carbs are the preferred fuel source, but because when glucose comes into your body wants to clear it ASAP. So carbohydrates will raise your blood sugar. It will raise, insulin will come in to push the blood sugar back down. And so if glucose was truly the preferred fuel source, then we wouldn't have an epidemic of people with insulin resistance or prediabetes or even diabetes or obesity. You can reverse your insulin resistance by just simply changing your fuel source over to ketones or lowering your carbohydrates. Okay, and when I do say carbs from this point on, just know I'm talking about every other source of carbohydrates except for vegetables. Okay? Leave vegetables alone. They're in a special category for me. Okay. All right. So, so basically, when you do consume carbohydrates, the blood sugar goes up, insulin comes in, and whenever that is happening, you're more than likely storing fat. Okay, so you're storing that energy as fat. It'll go to the liver first, then it'll go to the muscles, and then anything left over is going to the fat stores. Okay, so if you're not working out or you're not engaged in some kind of regular physical activity, most of the carbohydrates that you're eating is spiking your blood sugar and it's going straight to the fat stores, which we do not want, obviously. Okay. So with keto, you're controlling your blood sugar, which controls your insulin levels, which controls your hunger. Usually when you are consuming carbohydrates, you need to be eating about every 2 to 3 to 4 hours. And that's because when the blood sugar does go up. Okay. If you're speaking or there's somebody in the background, could you please mute yourself? I think I can do it here. Okay. All right. So usually when blood sugar goes up, it stays up and elevated for a couple hours, 2 to 3 to 4 hours, and then it usually comes back down. And when it comes back down, that's when you get hungry, or when you are a sugar burner, as I like to call crungry, cranky or hungry, or hangry, hungry and angry. So, but when you do keto, it depletes your glycogen stores, it depletes the glucose. It doesn't do it 100% because our body does need some glucose for protection and other processes in the body. But once we deplete enough glycogen down and the glucose out, then we can start using our own body fat as fuel. Okay. And then one other benefit, okay, actually, what is ketones? So ketones is basically, it's an energy byproduct created once you convert from a sugar to a fat burner. And one of the main benefits is with glucose, you are creating 38 ATP per molecule. And with fatty acid or ketone, you're creating 146 ATP. So ATP is basically what fuels us. And so if you're working out, you obviously want more ATP because you're going to have more energy. Okay? So you get 38 versus 146, so almost 4 times greater fuel efficiency with fat over carbs. Okay. So here we do have some negative aspects, and we have some people that talk negative about it. I used to talk negative about keto because I didn't understand it. I always like to live by the quote, you don't know what you don't know until you know that you didn't know. So, so ketoacidosis, and people will throw keto under the bus for 3 main reasons. Ketoacidosis is one of the primary one. So ketoacidosis, it sounds a lot like ketosis. It's a serious life-threatening condition that occurs mostly in type 1 diabetics. But you will get it in some type 2 diabetics that are towards the end of their life, or their pancreatic beta cell, or their pancreas giving them insulin. So that's one big thing. But if you're a normal, healthy person and you should not have any issue with ketoacidosis. Eating fat and cholesterol. Okay? That's the other reason people will throw you in the bus, because most nutritionists, most personal trainers, most doctors are still recommending the heart healthy diet, which is low cholesterol, low fat, high carbohydrate. Okay? So, even I think it was last year or the year before, the American Heart Association came out and saying eating cholesterol doesn't matter. Because the amount of cholesterol that you eat has very little to no effect on your actual blood cholesterol level numbers. Okay, and now the fat that you do eat, that is going to affect your cholesterol levels. So eating more good healthy fats, that will raise your good HDL levels, and it will also raise your good LDL levels, and it will lower your bad LDL. So if your HDL is too low, then it's considered bad. If you have too much hard, dense LDL, that is considered bad. We want our LDL to be large, fluffy, okay? And that's why it's very, very important to never just get a general cholesterol test. You want to know what your particles are in order to know if they're good or bad. So a general cholesterol test will give you HDL, LDL, total cholesterol. You want to know what the actual particles are of LDL. So then you know if it's healthy or not. Because if it's all healthy LDL, it doesn't matter how high it really goes. Okay. And the other thing is carbohydrates. Okay. Eating too many carbohydrates, the non-vegetable carbohydrates, they will raise the bad LDL and they'll lower the good, and they'll also lower the HDL, which we don't want. And then fats. So fats, they're still being played all over the place as being evil, but it's starting to come around. In the 80s and 90s, you didn't even have the term healthy fats. Okay? So eating more avocados, olive oil, that wasn't a recommendation back in the 80s and 90s. And then the government came out. If the government did come out and say, just eat all the fat that you want, it's good for you, then we would start to question the government even more than we do now. So, plus there's no scientific evidence that condemned fat or cholesterol. It was all based on just a hypothesis, which I'll get into a little bit later here. And then the final thing that people throw keto under the bus for is the fact that cutting carbs. Dietitians will say, where are you going to get your healthy whole grains and all that stuff? So you don't need healthy whole grains. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. There is essential proteins, like in terms of essential amino acids, and there is also essential fats, but there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Okay. All right, so keto adapting. Okay, so the aspects of getting into ketosis, because it's going to take a while to get into ketosis. It doesn't just happen overnight. So you're eating carbs and the next day you eat low carbs and all of a sudden you're in ketosis. So it's going to vary depending on the person and depending on your past history. Remember, it's not just a low carb diet. If you do low carb and you do low calories, you will fail. 99% of diets that focus on calories and limiting them usually fail. And usually when they come off of it, weight goes up, and usually they gain more weight than they actually lost. So it's just yo-yo dieting, which we don't want to do. Keto is not a count your calories type of diet. All right? Most people are metabolically damaged from consuming too many carbs and not enough calories. So to adapt, you're going to be eating a lot more calories, but you're going to be doing it less often because the fat is going to sustain your hunger levels. So it will be more controlled. All right, so with carbohydrates, when you're adapting, you need to limit them severely. So typically the number given is 50 carbohydrates, total carbohydrates. But if you're carb sensitive, you might need to be as low as 10 or 15. It just all depends on you and your past and your hormones. Now, the other thing is protein. So it's not a high protein diet, okay? It's moderate protein. So it will be different for everybody. If you eat too much protein, it can actually be turned into glucose via a process known as gluconeogenesis, and too much of that can take you out. So that's why there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate, because the body can make glucose out of protein. Now, the ranges that I usually give are going to be between 70 and 90 grams of protein per day. And that, for some people, that takes a huge mindset shift. Now, that 70 to 90, that's going to be whether you're a 120-pound woman or whether you're a 220-pound man. Okay? So the fat that you eat is going to cause you not to need as much protein. Because when I was a bodybuilder, so I got a picture of me back in my bodybuilding days, I usually weighed between 215 to 222 pounds. I would consume anywhere from 350 to 425 grams of protein a day. So I used to eat 120 egg whites a week, 21 cans of tuna, 3 per day. And now I typically eat anywhere from 70 to 90 grams of protein a day. And pound for pound, I am the strongest I've ever been, and my body fat's the lowest it's been in my life. So, and I think yesterday I only consumed like 39 grams of protein. So fat spares protein. You don't need as much as they tell you. So that's another big advantage, is protein is usually the most expensive, so you save money on keto. Okay, and then usually the biggest mindset shift when adapting into keto is the fat, eating fat. Okay, so fat is healthy as long as it's the right type. And with keto, it's going to be between 60 to 90% of your total calories coming from fat. I usually try and shoot between 200 to 300 grams of fat per day. And that's just to maintain my weight of anywhere between 175 to 180. So during my bodybuilding days, it would take me almost 2 weeks to consume what I consume in a day now. Okay. And then finally is calories. So again, keto is not a count your calories type of diet. Especially when you're adapting, you're going to be eating more calories because the majority of them are coming from fat. And so you just need to realize that, not be afraid of eating fat as calories, and realize that too low of calories is damaging your metabolism. I'll get more into the calories side here in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to skip that slide. All right, we're going into carbohydrates here. Okay, so carbohydrates, it's basically, you have to say goodbye to it. You can't keto adapt. You can't control your insulin, control your blood sugar levels. Can everybody still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my screen froze for a reason. So you can't keto adapt, you can't control your insulin levels if you are eating too many carbohydrates. And when I say bye-bye, so that means like the breads, the pastas, the cookies, the oatmeal, potatoes, all that stuff. But that's the traditional sense. So you need to just basically change your thinking around it. So I make breads, brownies. Just yesterday I had me and my daughter, we finished off our chocolate chewy protein cookies. So they were delicious. You just need to make it substitute the white or wheat flour or non-keto type flours with a keto or low carb approved flour. Okay? Now, if you don't know how to cook, then there's plenty of things out there that will teach you how to cook. I mean, you're going to suck at pretty much whatever you start, and cooking is something that everybody should be implementing into their life a little bit more. But it's all about everything, all the carbohydrates, especially the non-fibrous vegetables, it all converts to sugar. So your body wants to convert everything into the simplest form possible. And when you consume carbohydrates, it's going to turn that into glucose, which is basically sugar to the body. And so with fat, it wants to turn it into a fatty acid. With protein, it wants to turn it into amino acid. So the body wants simple when it's digesting. And it doesn't matter if it's a simple carbohydrate or a complex. So a simple carbohydrate, say it's a donut, and a complex carbohydrate, say it's oatmeal. All right, it's all sugar. It all turns to glucose in the body. Obviously, the donut's going to spike your blood sugar quicker, and you're going to come down quicker. That's going to lead to more cravings for wanting those sweet, tasty foods. But again, it all turns to sugar. It all raises blood sugar. It all raises insulin levels. And then when too much insulin is present, you cannot be using ketones. So we want to get the insulin controlled so we can start moving into more ketone and burning our own body fat. Okay. All right, so inflammation. Okay, so this is the silent killer. And the top two things that cause inflammation in the diet are going to come from vegetable oils. So your canola, soybean oil, corn oil, all that stuff, the bad stuff. You want to avoid those. So vegetable oils and sugar are the top two things that you absolutely want to avoid in your diet. So if you know somebody who's basically consuming those, it's kind of like every time they do consume those, it's like they're having a earthquake and a tornado going on inside their body every time they consume that. So it's the reason for all this health epidemic and obesity epidemic that we currently have. Okay? Now, inflammation will open you up to pretty much everything. And depending on your genes and your lifestyle, that will determine what gets turned on. So person A might become obese, person B might get diabetes, person C, cancer, person D, stroke, person E. You basically just fill in whatever you don't want to get, never want to get. Okay. And you have to understand that a high carbohydrate diet is a high inflammation diet. Okay? Because when blood sugar goes up, especially when it goes up too much, that's causing inflammation in the body. And gluten, grains, processed carbs, sugar, it all passes through the blood-brain barrier, and that's why it is so addictive. So much like cocaine, heroin, nicotine, even caffeine, okay? They basically all affect the same areas of the brain, and that's why it's so hard to get off. And I truly believe it's harder to get off sugar than it is cocaine or heroin, because it's pretty much everywhere and it's in everything and it's so cheap. All right. And okay, so moving on to fat. Okay, and I'm gonna finish here real quick here. All right, so we got about 15 more minutes. So this should be the last couple slides here, and then we'll get to the recipes. All right, so with fat, it is the essence of keto. And for a lot of people, it's going to be a complete mindset shift to eat more fat when we've been told for decades, keep your fat low and all that stuff. So a calorie is not just a calorie, all right? That's super important to know. And either you're not, so calories, they basically become important when, one, you're not eating enough of them, or you're eating the wrong types of food. So when you switch to becoming a fat burner, your body is going to begin the repair process of your metabolism and organs and all that stuff. So metabolism and inflammation, they will start to return back to normal. And okay. Everybody can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. All right. So your body's going to return to normal. And when you do control your blood sugar, control your insulin levels, your body's going to tell you when you're hungry rather than going by the clock. Oh, it's 12 o'clock, it's lunchtime, all right, or by other people telling you it's time to eat, or just by your emotions. So everything basically comes back into check, into normalness. Okay? But without enough fat calories, you're not going to be able to produce enough ketones for energy. So it's very important to get your mind around, I have to eat fat, I have to eat fat. So anywhere between 150, 200, 250 grams of fat per day. Okay? Snacking will also, it'll probably be a thing of the past because your metabolism is going to come back on to, or be raised back up to normal. If you do have cravings, especially for something sweet or carby, okay, just feed it some fat, because that's truly what your brain is craving. Your brain is made up, is 60% fat. So if we're not feeding it the fuel it needs, it's going to start sending signals out to get the nutrients in. Okay. And the other thing with calories and is now I might not have time to go through this, but if you just Google Ansel Keys starvation diet study, and you'll learn how important calories truly are. So Ansel Keys he's the reason we fear fat and cholesterol to this day, but he did do one good thing in his career, and that is the Great Starvation Diet. So I don't have time to go through that now, but just if you want to learn more about it, just Google it and it'll come up. Okay, so the final thing, and then the best fat, so we'll just talk about this real quick. The best fat is going to be saturated fat. So this is the one that we've been told causes the heart disease, causes the stroke, causes the cancers and all that. And that was just based on the hypothesis that was incorrect. Okay, so saturated fat is the most important. It regulates inflammation in your brain and gut, and raises the good HDL, the good LDL, lowers the bad, and also lowers your triglycerides as well. And then the second most important fat is going to be DHA, which is the fat you get from seafood, fish oil, fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, that kind of stuff. Okay. All right, so final slide here, keto myths. Okay, so there's several things that people say keto, this is why keto is successful, or this is why you shouldn't do keto and all that stuff. Okay, so it just lowers calories. Again, it's not a low calorie diet. It's not a count your calories kind of diet. Once you become fully keto adapted, you might be eating less calories because you're just less hungry and you don't need to eat as much. The other thing they say is you don't get enough fiber in your diet. Fiber will potentially go down, especially if you are eating a lot of whole grain products like oatmeal and whole wheat bread with like 8 grams of fiber or something like that. You will get plenty of fiber from vegetables, the nuts, the seeds, approved baking powders like flax, coconut, nut flours, stuff like that. But you just have to know that slapping this has fiber in it, or this has 4 grams of fiber in it, doesn't make it healthy. Just like slapping a gluten-free tab on it or an organic tab on it. I mean, I've seen organic animal crackers. And I mean, you should be eating animal crackers. All right. The other thing is not enough nutrients. Okay. Keto for me, it's kind of like a vegetarian diet with some protein mixed in. So I eat anywhere between 5 to 15 servings of vegetables a day. Right? Vegetables are probably the most highest quality in terms of nutrient dense foods out there. Also meats, full fat dairy, nuts and seeds, they're also going to pack a nutrient dense punch for you. Okay. And if you are not a veggie fan, with keto, you're going to be starting to salt your food with good salts, sea salt, pink Himalayan salts, and you can cook with coconut oil, lard, butter, ghee. You can add sour cream to your vegetables. So the list is endless what you can do to mix up your vegetables and make them taste good again. So during keto, one thing that I started developing was, like, I don't get cravings too often, but I actually crave Brussels sprouts, steamed Brussels sprouts. I never ate Brussels sprouts before, but for some reason they just hit the spot. Okay. And then the other thing with nutrients is fat-soluble vitamins are going to be absorbed a lot better on keto. So you need fat to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins. Low fat, you get low to minimum absorption of those. Plus the grains and legumes, they actually have anti-nutrients in them, like lectins and saponins and other things like that, that prevent digestion and cause gut health issues and that kind of stuff. And then the final thing is they just say it's all about water. It's water weight. Okay, so you'll lose water weight when you first start, and that's because carbohydrates basically cause you to hold on to water. And when you go low carb, it basically shuttles the water, shuttles the salt out, and that's why it's important to get a lot more sodium on a ketogenic, low carb type of nutrition plan. Okay, so we've got about 7 minutes, and I wanted to share the recipes, but I want to make sure does anybody have any questions or anything?
No question.
No questions? Anybody?
Well, I was wondering, so whenever we eat any kind of carbohydrate, any vegetable like lettuces or things like that, we count the carbs. Is that right?
When you're adapting, yes. There is something called tracking your net carbs. So for instance, net carbs is total carbs minus the fiber. So avocado is usually a good example. So avocado has usually 17 grams of carbohydrates, but 14 grams of that is fiber. So fiber, for most people, doesn't raise the blood sugar, which doesn't cause insulin to come in. So the net carbs for an avocado is 3. But when you're adapting, it's more important to just count total carbohydrates, especially when you're brand new to it, because we don't want to confuse you and throw a bunch of stuff at you. But yeah, you want to, when you're adapting to keto, just count the total number of carbohydrates.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Can you talk about sugar alcohols? I've been on keto since the end of December and I've lost about 25 pounds, but I still don't have a good grasp on that.
Okay. So sugar alcohol, so you're talking about...
how does that impact our overall macros?
So you're talking about like maltitol and the stuff that ends with the TOLs?
Yes.
Okay. I typically tell people to avoid them, simply because it is, I mean, some people will say that it's okay because it doesn't raise your blood sugar. But the thing is that the sugar alcohols is usually doing something to our gut. So the gut bacteria, so we're supposed to have good beneficial gut bacteria and we're supposed to have bad bacteria in our gut, and they interact. And if the ratio goes too far good or too far bad, then that's going to cause certain issues. So a lot of people will say they have digestive issues from eating too much of it. I know there's one sugar alcohol that you should never give to your dogs because it will like kill them like that. But yeah, so I tell people to avoid it. I mean, typically there's good sweeteners out there, like erythritol. I use that in pretty much all my baking stuff. That's my go-to, or stevia. But where are you typically eating your sugar alcohols?
Really, the only place I do is I'm a wound care certified nurse, and I travel the state of Texas consulting doctors and nurses and all that. So I'm always on the go.
Okay.
So I grab a lot of to-go food, and sometimes that's a bag of bacon with a bag of hard-boiled eggs. But a lot of times, convenience is key in the morning if I've got to get out quick or got to be somewhere last minute. And so I may grab like an Atkins bar, and that's typically where I see the sugar alcohols. And I don't eat those frequently. It's I may have maybe 1 or 2 bars a week.
Okay.
So and I've lost 25. I've stalled for about 3 weeks right now.
Okay. Yeah, the Atkins bars, I tell people just avoid those if possible. So have you joined the keto challenge?
I don't know, honestly. I have a crazy schedule, so to ask me if I've joined anything, who knows?
Okay. All right. Well, we got less than a minute here, but if you go to my YouTube channel, YunTraining, YUN training, I make my own protein bars, and they travel pretty awesomely. So they're pretty good to go. There's you can make like egg muffins, take those to go, all kinds of things that you can just take and go. The pancakes, that was one of the recipes I was going to share.
Pancakes, yeah.
Yeah, pumpkin pancakes, you can take those. You can go to the store, get some get some butter, put it on there, and you've got basically a meal to go and all that stuff.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? I think we're less than 30 seconds here now. No? Okay. All right. And then, obviously, if you do have friends that want to join the challenge, it's the 47-day keto challenge. If you just Google it, it will come up. If you are in the keto challenge, just go to make sure you're on Facebook in the actual group. I'll be sharing recipes and tips and everything in there. So it's going to be starting on Tuesday. And pretty much. So any other?
Hey, Jason, are you going to have time to share any recipes?
I
Nope.
Share them. Are you in the keto group?
I'm not in the keto group yet.
If you just go to my YouTube channel, YunTraining, I have an entire playlist that has a bunch of recipes in there.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Any
Thank
other?
you.
Okay. Well, cool. Well,